Hello, welcome. Hi, Renee.
Hey Tamara, how are you?
I'm good. So we're
Good.
here for our HR Huddle and talk about everything HR and what we're seeing in the trends and news today. And Renee and I and Jen, our team, were exchanging some statistics that we have been seeing, and we thought we would talk a little bit about those and see where that takes our conversation related to people specifically and engagement. And one is Gallup is showing that in their engagement survey that engagement is higher than it has been in years. It's trending high. They used to talk about how low the engagement was in the U.S. and it's higher, today, and a lot because of how organizations are handling this pandemic and how they're treating their people, which is awesome. And then we also saw a statistic in McKinsey's women's report that 1 in 4 women report that they are looking at cutting back or leaving their organizations because of all of the pressure. And I think there's a statistic that it's the women are 3 times more as likely to be the caregivers and taking care of the house than the men in the household. And just that immense pressure. And so a little bit contradictory, statistics, good news on the engagement side and how organizations are handling it. And so we just thought we would explore that, for our few minutes with you guys today. So Renee, I don't know if you have thoughts or reactions to that to start off with.
Yeah, Tamara, when you suggested this through email, the first thing I thought of was the joke that women always say that I need a wife, like they say, gosh, so much to manage and trying to manage all these things at work and at home. I need a wife too. Like I need somebody to help me at home. And it is tough, I think, sometimes. I think it's why traditionally we haven't seen as many women leaders in CPA firms, because they have a hard time figuring out, how do I get to that partner chair and take that big step and also manage everything I have to manage at home?
Yes. Yeah, exactly. I have said I want a wife too, and my husband's like, yeah, that's a great idea. And then he's like, no, never mind. So he second guesses it as soon as he agreed. But yeah, it's like, how do we balance that? And we've been talking about in these huddles, like, the roles and responsibility and getting clear about that and making sure that we, have support and that we communicate it. And I think that's one of the things. I just wrote a blog, and maybe we'll get Emily to post it here when she shares this later. I just wrote a blog about how to win at work, and we have to win at home also. And I think that message, and it really isn't just a women's issue. I do think it's for everybody that we need to pay attention to that. And I do know that, men more share in childcare and rearing and household chores and things like that than maybe traditionally in the past. But when left to it, I do think women are the ones that are going to step up. And if they're not winning, their family's not winning, they're going to be the ones that are saying, if I have to choose, I'm choosing home. I'm choosing family. I'm choosing kids. And I think that's something to, really pay attention to. How do we, best facilitate that and drive that?
Well, and you said you and Jen have been talking a lot about delegation and, clarity of ownership. And I do think we struggle with that sometimes at work of all genders, and also at home. I do think that, one of the things we teach, Tamara, when we teach our roles grids, is we have a home roles grid, because it's a big aha sometimes for people at home that they say, wow, I've been doing all of this all by myself, rather than saying, hey, honey, you've got to manage, let's figure out what you can own on this list that I'm not going to handle anymore. And I'm just going to be peripherally helping, and you are going to really run with it. Right. And same thing with the kids. As the kids get older, asking them to step up and own pieces and parts of running the household.
Right.
So the same skills that we're working so hard on at the office, we can also put to use at home.
Yeah, exactly.
And then outsourcing some of that, Tamara. And there are great services available, and I live out in the suburbs, and we have, like way out kind of in the boonies here in Massachusetts. And we have delivery, dry cleaning, we have delivery of groceries. So there are lots of things that you can kind of weave in to outsource some of that. So you're not having to manage so much at home, which I think is something to consider. Now, some of us, that's hard. We like it our way. which is one of the 7 sins of delegation. Like I don't want to give up the control, or it won't be perfect exactly how I want it. And it is true. I don't like sometimes the way my husband makes the bed, but he makes that bed every morning. So I just don't say anything at all.
Because it will not happen otherwise.
I say, thank you, honey. I'm so glad you did that.
Well, and I just shared with Renee before we came on that I am outsourcing Thanksgiving dinner, which we've never done. And it's just going to be our family and, my adult daughters who are going to be home, and that's it. And so they suggested it. I'm like, yeah, no problem. And I can support local. It's a local, just a local restaurant here. And so how do we best do that? And I think that's such a good point too, is what can we let go of? Like, we don't have to be perfect. And that might be something as we support and work on engagement with our team, and we support people winning both at home and in their work, is what can we let go of that we don't need to do now? Or where, do we not need perfection? I think we all want to strive to do a really great job. You hire really great people and they want it to be perfect. Where do we not need to be perfect? And maybe we need to explicitly say that. Or maybe we need to defer some things and say, hey, let's work on that later. I know we've been doing that in our own business. This is our busy season. And we've been saying, hey, let's defer that. Good. Put it on the list. And then we'll prioritize it after the first of the year and figure out where does it fit? So giving permission, I think, is really important for us to be able to do that. And Emily was on, so she posted that blog. So it's out there to take a look at.
Awesome.
Well, Renee, I know we've been also talking about, Flex. And we're about ready to publish the Anytime Anywhere Work survey results. And you just did a webinar with Jen. Where does that fit into this conversation?
Yeah, those results are coming out. By the way, we'll just say it for those who are listening. December 1st is what we're aiming for. We know people are anxious to take a look at it, and we are too. We're anxious to get it out there. So that's what we're shooting for. And I think these programs are just so important to provide people with more choices. So I was thinking about this today, Tamera. I had a doctor's appointment. I had to go get my son from the high school. Nobody else could handle it today. And so, I have to figure out now, I took that time off from during the day. So I'm going to work some extra hours tonight, or I worked some extra hours this morning. So having that kind of flexibility around the responsibilities that I'm managing at home are crucial and critical to being successful, being a full-time employee and a full-time mom. And so I think that's, that just shows you that how important this flexibility of time and place is, which is what the survey is all about.
Yeah, awesome. Well, that place is important. Yeah, go ahead.
Did you say place is important? Yeah, well, and that's something we have some pretty strong opinions on, Tamera, the anywhere component of that. Because some firms are pushing back on us and saying, hey, Renee, Tamera, and Jen, I'm okay with work from office or work from home, but I'm not okay with anywhere work. I don't want my people working in the repair shop for their car. I don't want people working from their kids' pool. I don't feel good about that. While they're waiting for kids for swim practice, I feel like it's either home or work, and I don't feel safe anywhere else. And that is concerning to me. Because, gosh, those are these fantastic pockets of time that I can grab up and get something done. And it's probably not going to be, something where I have to spread out a bunch of papers. It's not any type of work, but I sort of plan out my day and think, how can I capture those pockets of productivity? So if we don't have access to that, I'm concerned, especially, by the way, for our moms, because I think when I go to swim practice, it's mostly moms driving kids to swim.
Yeah.
And, those kinds of errands and those kinds of activities, at least historically, have been more handled by the moms.
Yep. And we have to, provide the security and the guidelines and all of those things around it. But anytime, anywhere, is important for us to pay attention to. And again, supporting that and having the flexibility, because we need to be able to facilitate that, just with everything that we have going on and who's under our roof. My son was hunting this weekend, and he is doing online school, and he was using his phone to do his homework. And so he was messaging and, his teachers, and one of his teachers was like, I need some boundaries. I'll respond to you on Monday. I'm like, that's perfectly acceptable, right? He happened to be doing the work on the weekend. He's not going to get an answer. And, he was like, I can't upload, and she's like, just take a picture. And we're just like super creative about how do we get our work done. And she's like, that works fine, no problem. And I just, loved the encouragement, as we, figured that out, how do we make that work? So,
yeah, which is connected to clients too, by the way, Tamera, because they don't have a scanner necessarily. And they say to you, I don't know how to scan this. I don't know how to do any of this. And we can teach them how to use their phone and take pictures of documents and upload them to us. There are ways around it if we can be creative and flexible, like it's maybe not going to be perfectly scanned, or there's, may not be in the right format, but can we still work with that?
Yeah, exactly. And having that flexibility to do that. I think another thing, on the support, as we think about engagement and we think about how do we win at home is, how do we share stories about what's working and how do we make it work? And we know some firms that have been, putting together, some roundtables or lunch and learns or, networking or, groups to be able to, facilitate those kinds of discussions. And, how do I make busy season work? Or how do I make, this flex and remote work? Or, how do you do it? And I think those stories are so important. And if we could encourage those kinds of stories and that kind of sharing, people to go to, doing a panel perhaps. I mean, that sounds so formal. I don't, mean it to be that formal, but how do we provide, those kinds of, roundtable discussions and just say, how do we do this? How do we facilitate this? How do we manage, the balance? I think is so important.
Oh, I love that, Tamera. And the transparency of that, because so many of our leaders in this profession are using flexibility, both
Yep.
men and women.
Yep.
And maybe they're not being that transparent about it. They're just putting out of office on their calendar. And everybody says, oh, I'm sure they're at a client or they're very busy. And sometimes they're going and taking care of appointments too, or going to meet a friend for lunch. And so just having more transparency about, I benefit from that flexibility as well. And I think you can, staff and leaders and managers.
And this is how we do it. Another one, and I know you and I have been asked about this from some clients we've been working on, but we hear this, how do we use the technology and the apps that we have available? And, they're evolving, Zoom is evolving, and we're like big fans of the breakout rooms and, the function that we can do there. I was just doing a, leadership program for some seniors with Brianna, and we were, Zooming people into breakout rooms, and they talk so much and they get so much value out of doing that. And how are we using Teams, and how does our firm use these apps so that we can be consistent? Where do we find things, and how are we learning about new features and functionality, or if I'm not comfortable with it? But that could be another, form of, roundtable and discussion that you could have.
You're mentoring on technology. Yeah. Oh, I love that.
Yeah, exactly. And just trying to figure out, how do we make these this support available and easily accessible, and it doesn't have to take a whole lot of planning, or formatting to be able to do that. We can just, come together and say, we're going to talk about Teams. If you want to come and talk about Teams, let's talk about Teams. If you want to talk about Zoom, let's talk about Zoom and how we can use that with clients, and how are we using it? And we can talk about security at the same time, that where question. We could talk about security.
Yeah, right. And don't forget with the security, also being on the phone, what kinds of things you're saying, who are you sitting near, who can hear you, who can look over your shoulder and see your screen. So it's not just about the Wi-Fi. Sometimes our IT guys are laser focused in on, worried about public Wi-Fi. And we have to think more broadly than that and give people those best practices.
Right. Exactly. Yeah. That's a good idea.
And Tamera, just taking people under our wing too. I mean, you're talking about some, not formal, but like some group activities, but also I think women can just reach out to other women in the firm. Men can reach out to other men and say, let's get to know each other. Let's talk about how I make it work and how you might make it work, and answer some of those questions, share some, like you said, those stories one-on-one.
Yeah, I think so. I think that's a great idea. And I think, from an HR perspective, it feels like we have to have all these programs and it has to be so formal, and it really doesn't. And you could, somebody initiates the idea, how do we empower people to go and run with it? What kind of guidelines or guidance could we give them and say, that's a fantastic idea. Let's have a Teams meeting, or, let's have a Zoom lunch meeting, and we'll talk about, how are we going to plan, through the end of the year? What does that look like? Or how are we making, I know a lot of states right now are, pulling back, the virus is, rearing its ugly head. And, we've closed restaurants and bars here in Minnesota at 10 p.m. and we've restricted group sizes again. And all the kids, most school districts have pulled kids out of school, at least secondary, 6th through 12th grade. So there's just a lot of change happening. How do we facilitate that? So from an HR perspective, I don't have to have this big formal program. I think that's, one of the things that, I would think about. How can we empower people to, just facilitate these kinds of dialogues and discussion?
Yes. And also, Tamera, you and I have been doing a lot of breakout rooms in our training, and sometimes we don't even have one planned. Maybe we're doing a 2-hour webinar and people aren't really talking or sharing, and we say, throw them in groups. And it is amazing when you get them into those groups of 2 and 3 and 4, how they open up and start sharing and talking to each other and have so many questions and ideas. And so how can we tap into that? And just think about inside of things you're already doing. Maybe you're doing a training session on the time entry system, and then throw people in breakouts and see what comes up out of it. I really do think you could leverage some of that.
And I think when you do that, that will continue to drive that engagement, like that feedback from the Gallup poll. And we'll post those in there too, the links to the Gallup and the McKinsey reports that we're talking about. We'll stick those in the chat also, so you can go read those on your own. But I think about the engagement. I think these are the kinds of things when they say I'm more engaged because of how my organization is handling things. It's thinking about these kinds of things and empowering them and empowering these kinds of discussions and transparency, like you said.
Yeah, belonging, Tamera, like really making people feel like no matter, what your life situation is, no matter what you have going on, you're a part of this firm. We want to help you succeed. So let's talk about it. What do you have going on?
Right.
And just being really transparent about that.
Right. Exactly. And then providing the flexibility, just how do we have them help make it all work, and how do we reprioritize?
Yeah. And Tamera, one thing that this year's survey is really focused on remote. So I do want to say we are talking about time at any time, and we do think that's still important, and maybe in an elevated way, because some of your people are going to be remote schooling. They're going to have to change their schedule so they can take half the day in remote school, and their spouse is going to take the other half of the day, or mom's going to take the other half. And so I do think we're going to have a renewed openness to the anytime component, because some of my clients are saying, well, anytime here or there, but like every day, I'm not sure about that. And so they're going to have to wrap their heads around, how can we be creative? How can I be working over here, maybe in the evening, pushing work to you, Tamera, so when you wake up in the morning, it's there waiting for you. And I'll be busy with kids, but not really, but well, we're in communication about that.
Yeah.
So it's not just me off working by myself. You don't know what's happening, but we're talking about how can we work together to try to make these unique schedules work for the firm and for our clients.
And what that makes available is I know who has the ball. I know you have the ball and you're going to work on it tonight, that I'll have it tomorrow. And that's fine then. If I know where the ball is, I'm not worried the ball is going to come and drop on me. That's when we get in trouble. I think exactly. I think that's when we're like, this isn't working. But we can be in communication about that. We can facilitate that. And then there's times we have to be on, StreamYard Live, Facebook page, or we're facilitating, a retreat on Wednesday. Those are scheduled, and they're scheduled in advance. We know we can plan around it. We can facilitate that. And so we can have that all. We can, just how do we make that work? And what does that look like, for each of us?
Well, and I do think, Tamera, sometimes people aren't talking to you, like some of my firm leaders feel like their people are off track and they're out of communication. And it's probably to a certain extent because they are feeling guilty or uncertain. And that's where it's so important to reach in and say, hey, how are you doing? And is everything okay? I'm not in communication with you and I don't know why. And I want to be, and I want to help you.
Yeah.
And start right there, and they might cough up, I've got this crazy schedule. I just don't know what to do.
And we don't want to have to hide. We shouldn't have to hide it. It's like, I can't help you if I don't know. And
Right.
so just, encouraging people to say, hey, I need help. My life has changed here.
Well, and Tamera, it's not always going to be yes, right? I mean, some people might be hearing us say that they have to say yes to everything. But if I came to you right now and told you I wanted to only work in the middle of the night, it wouldn't be a yes. We'd have to figure something else out.
Right. Right. We'd have to reassign projects, or we'd have to reorganize the role, or maybe it is a no, but at least then we know we can figure it out instead of pretending, right? We can facilitate that.
Yeah.
So great discussion. Engaging our people and making sure we're winning at home and at work. When we do win at home, we're going to win more at work. We're going to be more productive. We're going to be more transparent. We're going to, be more on top of things and know what's coming. So, it makes a difference to, figure out how to support that with all of our team members. So
support that whole person. That's what I really love about that. Yes.
Exactly.
Awesome. Great topic, Tamera.
Yes. So thank you. Thanks for joining me today. And we welcome any other topics. If you guys want us to explore anything or you want to participate, we would love, for you to engage with us. So give us your topics. Have a great, productive week this week before Thanksgiving. We hope it's as effective as you can make it be, and find things that we are grateful for. So that's one of the things we're working on this week as well. So take care, and we'll see you next Monday. Thank you.
Thanks, everybody. Thanks, Tamera.
Thank you.